I often really, I try to think as small as possible. Sometimes, you can't boil the ocean. Really think about a problem that we're trying to solve. And then, okay, what's that sort of the minimum viable product of thing that we might do, which will just edge us forward.
Welcome to Data and AI Mastery, the podcast where we bring you cutting-edge insights, practical advice, and inspiring stories from the leaders shaping the future of data and AI across the globe. I'm your host, Raul Gabriel Irma, founder of Cambridge Spark, the leader in transformational data and AI upskilling, career development, and progression. In each episode, I will be diving into real-world case studies of companies harnessing the power of AI to drive innovation, reduce costs, and create new business opportunities. So whether you are an aspiring data scientist, AI engineer, or seasoned executive, this show is designed to give you the tools and knowledge to stay ahead in a world where data is transforming every aspect of business. Stay ahead, stay inspired, stay masterful. Welcome to Data and AI Mastery. Hi Zaman, nice to see you. How's it going?
Very good, thanks. Very good, Raul. Lovely to meet you.
So before we talk about data and AI in action at Great Ormond Street Hospital, I'd love to get to know you a little bit more, Zaman. And you're the Chief Data Officer, which is really impressive. So it really, for listener, it'd be great to get an idea. Where did you start, and what does it take to become the CDO?
Of course. Okay. So I suppose, so just based on my experience, let me give you a little bit about my background and kind of how I got to where I got to. So I've been working with data and analytics for about 20 years. Yeah. But if I think back to when I was sort of younger, actually, I sort of grew up on a council estate. So, we were never sort of had any sort of privilege or anything like that. We were very sort of, life was tough for us. Obviously, my dad would go out and work really, really hard. And so I feel like one of the things that's, got to me to where I am is that sort of work ethic of really working hard, always doing the best you can, no matter what you're focused on. And so one of the things that really I think has always been a love of mine is maths as well. So I've always sort of loved numbers and kind of problem solving. So even I know some people can get put off by the numbers and maths and the complexity of it, but the way I look at it is actually, if you like problem solving, then whether you know it or not, you really do like maths. And we are all do like kind of thinking about problems and solutions to problems. So I've always really enjoyed maths, and I really kind of like that. So after I sort of left sort of school and college, university, I sort of graduated with a maths degree and kind of wanted to understand, all right, what can I do with this now? And kind of, that sort of work ethos. I started working actually. So if I think back to 20 years ago, I started as an information analyst. So I was like, what's today we could term as like a data engineer. But back then we were a little bit kind of almost a jack of all trades. So the data industry had not yet grown at all. So we were right in our infancy. We were actually, usually a back office function, a small part of IT, which also was sort of evolving, So I remember when I was speaking to my manager who started, he used to say, what we take for granted, even 20 years ago, we were taking for granted laptops and computers and Word documents. They used to do like hand typewriting, and, and kind of a lot of things were sent out by letter, and you would have to sort of, go to the post room and send things out. So technologically, we've moved on so much. Yeah, exactly. Moved on so much. So I feel like, so when I first started, data was just sort of one small part. And what we used to do really was just report on facts, and my sort of love of numbers and facts, I like that. But then sort of quite, again, in line with my sort of progression is I noticed that actually just taking that data, yes, you can just report the facts and you'll be okay. But I was always interested in what's the data really telling me. So I've always had that sort of inquisitive mindset as well. So kind of thinking about your question again, like, what is it that sort of got me here? Is that kind of that love of the data, love of understanding what, the numbers, but also then uniquely, what can we do with that data? So often we have problems, and whether that's, I've got a little bit of private sector experience within my sort of work tenure as well. And so one of the things that was obviously quite important in the private sector is, okay, how can we, what are our margins looking like? How can we improve that? How can we make ourselves more efficient? thinking about it from a healthcare perspective. So when I first joined 20 years ago as an analyst, I was working as an analyst and looking at the numbers, the stats, and really with a view of, okay, how can we improve what we already do? So we see 20 patients. What would it take to see 25 patients? What is the data telling us when we look at our first attendances and follow-up attendances? What are those ratios telling us? When you look at that data, why is it that Dr. A can see this much activity, but Dr. B sees this much? What's the really getting into the stories behind the data? And I feel like that inquisitive nature, and coupled with, I've always loved communicating and talking to people, and kind of not just about the numbers, but actually marrying my love of the numbers with the desire to go out and speak to people, I think is really what's allowed me to sort of make those step changes. And actually, if I remember your question correctly now, I think it's also about taking risks and being brave. Sometimes there is an element of, and especially this happened early in my career, when you look at the data, or when you were sitting then with other executives or other sort of managers and heads of department, a lot of what they were talking about, I would sit there and think, well, actually, I was thinking the same thing, or yeah, actually, that's exactly what I was sort of thinking about as well. So I think there's something about being brave and taking a risk that actually, when you speak, if you've got something, if you find yourself in that scenario where, this makes sense to me, or I've got something to say, 9 times out of 10, people want to hear what you've got to say. Because if we all just sort of didn't say anything, then we wouldn't get any further forward. If we only listen to 1 or 2 voices, then everybody would just only go with, in one direction of travel. But then I think it's that diversity of thought. And sometimes you might come up with a unique idea that nobody's thought about. Actually, that's the one which will really get some traction and take us forward. So that's kind of like, I don't know if I've really answered the question that you put forward, but hopefully that gives you a bit of a feel for, I think, what has allowed me to, take risks and be brave, coupled with my sort of desire to make changes and improve things.
Zaman, let's kick off. So you're the Chief Data Officer at Great Ormond Street Hospital. Can you tell us a little bit about the Great Ormond Street Hospital, actually, before we kick off?
Sure. Yeah. So Great Ormond Street Hospital, actually, we're a specialist tertiary organization. And so actually what we end up doing is we treat some of the sickest sort of children right across sort of internationally across Europe. I think we're one of the largest in Europe. And as you know, we're sort of very kind of closely aligned to our charity as well. So you'll have seen lots of sort of charity work ongoing around Great Ormond Street Hospital. They do some fantastic work here. We've got such a highly specialized number of services here.
Great, Suzanne. Can you tell us a bit about the scale of the operation at Great Ormond Street Hospital, like staff numbers, patients? That would be fantastic.
Sure, no problem. So we have about 6,000 staff. So it kind of gives you a bit of scale of the large kind of operations that we have. We've got over sort of 60 different subspecialties. So when we say specialties, we have unique departments. So more than 60 subspecialties, all looking at sort of pediatric health services. And this is the sort of the widest. So if you look at any organization across the UK, we have the largest set of services that we operate. Now we have about, I'm going to guess somewhere in the region of about between 50,000 inpatient and day cases. So you might come in for an operation, have to stay here. You might be seen on the day and go home, but we have about kind of 50,000 operations taking place. At the same time, we have between 250, 300,000 outpatient attendances. So you come in for the day, you have a 30-minute hour slot with the consultant or one of the team. And, all of that is done, kind of captured on our systems, ready for me and my teams to sort of take all of that data in and sort of try to make some sense of it. So hopefully it gives a bit of sense of the scale of the data that we use here as well. So just, really phenomenal.
So, Zaman, let's maybe talk about data and AI in action now. I'd love to, let's start with the sort of the healthcare industry. Can you talk us through what are some unique data challenges that, you're facing, you're working with, that you'd say are, different to maybe other industries?
So our commodity, if you like, which is different to other organizations in other industries, it's not about necessarily sales as such, or things that you build and you're going to sell, or a service that you're going to develop and you're going to sell. Our commodity is actually not about the money, but it's all about the patient outcome. Yeah. So we deliver good outcomes by ensuring that the patient has their operation. Yeah. They are seen, and then they have a better quality of life. As you can probably appreciate, because that's quite a subjective thing in one sense. Yes, life and death is very non-subjective. But actually, quality of life, outcome of an operation, all of that. You have then so many metrics that you can measure to show whether something is successful or not. And so, in the same way that in the private sector, you have measures like around the finances and is this profitable or not. You have a defined list of metrics, but you'll have many metrics, but you'll have like the list. In the healthcare service, we have a different set of metrics, but it's very, very wide ranging.
What are examples of those metrics that you may be looking at, just for the audience?
So, for example, yeah, of course. So benchmarking. So one of the things we look at, as a children's organization, we say, here's how many operations we do, and here are the outcomes for our patients. Yeah. And so you can look at life expectancy, health outcomes once a child has had an operation. When you compare us and the two other organizations, what does that look like? Another one might be, some other metrics will be around actually what we want to be able to demonstrate is that the work we do is of a very highly specialized nature. Yeah. So the patients that we are capturing, we need to make sure we are recording them appropriately. Yeah. And we can demonstrate that actually the work that we do, look at how many of our patients, how many diagnoses and comorbidities that these patients have. So unfortunately, again, we deal with the sickest children. So often they've got multiple things wrong with them. Just being able to, again, demonstrate that, okay, on average, we'll have 6 or 7 things that are, comorbidities and, difficult circumstances that these patients are dealing with. And then when you compare us to other children's specialist organizations, you then have some metrics then which say, okay, here's how we compare to others. So another sort of key metric that we have is our how quickly we see patients. So once a patient goes to their GP or is in their sort of local hospital, let's say you have a very specialist condition, and in that local hospital they don't have the expertise to treat you, they will refer you to Great Ormond Street, and then essentially we then measure, okay, from the time we get that referral, how quickly do we see you? And along the way, every one of those touch points, because first we will see you in an outpatient, the stat that I mentioned to you around 300,000 outpatient attendances. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to see you in an outpatient, understand, okay, what's your condition? What's your history? How can we, what is it that we need to do with you? Once we've done that, we will then either give you some medication or, and then start your treatment. Or we might say, actually, the thing that you have, you need an operation, and then we'll put you onto a waiting list to come in. We'll have to arrange for a bed to be arranged for you. We'll have to ensure, all of these facilities are available. And as you can imagine, all of those bits that I've talked about there, every single one of those touch points is a data entry onto our system, added to the waiting list, assigned to a consultant, assigned to a specialty. You come in on the day, and then all of that data then is something that we can then look at and analyze, and then really try to find some deep insights into that data, and then we sort of, sometimes it feels like we've got so much, almost too much data. How do you sort of see the wood for the trees? But then that's where that sort of the uniqueness comes in, of like the value that you can add is being able to find, here's the importance out of the data, i.e. the benchmarking, which is telling us we're doing something really well, or telling us something where actually when you look at the letters going out or discharge summaries being produced, how quickly are we doing those? Are we doing that enough on time? Are we completing everything on time? And where we're not, why aren't we? It just allows you to open a dialogue with people to really say, look, our peers, colleagues are able to do, are hitting this standard. What will it take for us to get there? So it's never about a blame culture. It's never about saying, well, you're not doing what you should be doing, but it's, okay, what can we do differently, which will allow us to improve? So that's just another way that you can use data to really improve our operations. Without the data, you might have a feeling, you might think, yeah, well, I think that we're okay, or, broadly speaking, we are fine. But then what the data allows you to do is look at, yes, 80-90% of the time we are fine, but here are some pockets at each end, and that's where we might need to focus.
Yeah, I mean, that resonates, right? You can't improve what you're not measuring. So sounds like if I play this back, and it sounds like due to the nature of, being a highly regulated environment with compliance, because of, the huge impact that each intervention has on patient, it's kind of like forcing to make sure we're on top of the data, we're measuring everything, and using that data, you've been able to retrospectively kind of highlight what's working, not working. So I'd love to hear from you, Zaman. What about the proactive way? Like, are there any opportunities with the data you've seen to, proactively, like you mentioned, improve operation or improve patient outcome rather than retrospectively? Or what sort of projects are you thinking about?
Yeah, so one of the things, and so like obviously the topic we're talking about, sort of AI and stuff like that. So one of the things we do as the organization, and we partnered with another company to do some of this, and we've got quite a lot of work ongoing in other organizations too, where we have sort of like natural language processing. So at the moment, as you can probably appreciate, we've got patients will come in, they'll sit at the consultant's desk, and we'll sort of have a one-to-one with them to really understand what's going on. A lot of the time, the way the computers are set up, their backs are to the patient, and then they'll be typing into these systems. Okay, you're telling me X, you're telling me Y, you're telling me Z, right? And, so again, from a efficiency perspective, is not great. Kind of that communication, engagement with the patient is not great. We've now got tools and models using AI and sort of some of the sort of the functionality that exists in today's world, that actually you can have a listening tool on your software, which integrates with your systems and allows you to basically start your recording in the same way you would do within any kind of chat that we have recording here. And it will then record the conversation, but then it will really cleverly pick out just the key bits of information that it needs to do, which is relevant to that patient journey. And if along the way you discuss that, I'm going to get you booked into a waiting list, it can quite easily also just say, you mentioned as well that you want to book this patient a follow-up appointment. So it will queue up those orders for you to be able to do that. But it very succinctly, and it kind of takes away any of the sort of the noise out of the system, but it allows the clinicians full access to be able to not just accept what the AI is telling me, but actually go through and yes, accept, or no, I'm going to reject this one. And it does it all securely, all safely. Nothing's ever in the sort of clouds, and none of this patient data will get out into the wider web, but it's all sort of done in a very safe, controlled environment. And it frees up a lot of time, as you can probably imagine, for our clinicians, because it is really a conversation then. So really good way of using sort of in practice some sort of AI. Something else we're starting to look at, and something I'm really keen for us to explore, is then, and especially at kind of Great Ormond Street, maybe how do we triangulate more data points? So there's something about, we know we have lots of wards and we have lots of beds, and we have lots of staffing those wards. Now, inevitably, you will have sickness, or, depending on staff grades, you'll have different people managing those wards. Sometimes what we inevitably ends up happening is, do we have the right staffing levels on each of our wards? Well, actually, our health roster data is there and available. If we were to triangulate activity levels with our workforce data, so it's not something that you would routinely do, because you always would see them as totally different things. Your workforce data and your patient data, two pockets. But if you started to join them together to try and generate you some insights, you could start to predict where we think the activity is going to spike here. We might need to have additional staff in this area, and not even sometimes the staff, but maybe the grade of staff, the type of staff, to proactively prevent issues happening, prevent sort of cancellations or, things going wrong. So, the thing that would go wrong would never actually take place, but it's because you're taking proactive action with the data. So this is something that it's an idea at the moment, something we want to sort of take forward. But, lots of use cases like this that, again, using the data to, exactly, 100%.
No doubt it's not going to be easy. A project, like you've mentioned, triangulating data in order to make predictive, I guess, operational decisions. I imagine a lot of stakeholders needs to be involved. How would you go about it? Like,
Exactly.
do you have a
Great question. And so I've been in this organization about a year now. And one of the things that we've really focused on, and especially over the last couple of months, we've established and we all recognize this is the thing we need to focus on first, is our data quality infrastructure. Yeah. Making sure that we have processes in place, that people know, getting the basics right. People know what they need to do to get this data captured accurately, and showing them, here's why you need to do it in this way. Because when you don't do that, this is what goes wrong. When it goes wrong, often it's because of a mistake that was made years ago, So actually getting the quality right proactively is so important. So we've established this forum, this group, to really look at, all right, what is the right training, thinking about our data stewards and the people that own the data. How can we get them really aligned and understanding the importance of why they do what they do, and get them to really engage with us, engage with the data, and then be able to show them that, look, by you doing this, here's how many things it can unlock. To your question is, how do you sort of make it a reality? I try to think as small as possible. Sometimes, you can't boil the ocean. Really think about a problem that we're trying to solve, and then, okay, what's that sort of the minimum viable product of thing that we might do, which will just edge us forward. I think right now our MVP is all around the data quality piece. So we've got to fix that first, get the basics right. But then you can start to say, okay, if everybody around the table can see the benefit, then we have much more chance of actually successfully ensuring that people are engaged, and they will adapt their operational process to not just do what they've always done, but actually, like in that scenario, proactively look at the roster, and rather than just, I'm just too busy. I can't look up from the table here because I'm just so busy doing the doing. How can you expect me to look at the future and plan, So there is a balance in there, but it's about trying to break down the problem into the smallest possible component and then giving them some solutions.
How important is education as part of that process? Because, I know you're a big fan of training, at Cambridge Spark with more than 50 apprentices with you. So obviously you're a big champion for professional development, but for delivering project, how important is education as you see?
It's absolutely the start point of where you got to go. So for me, one of the things that I've been doing, so I said I've been here about a year now, and we've just over the last few months established that forum, right? For the first 9 months of my sort of tenure here, it's all it's been about is knowledge and awareness of what data actually is, really explaining to as many people as I possibly can. And I'll sound like a broken record. As you can probably tell, I'm kind of like, everywhere I go, I will always be telling people the journey, the data, here's where it all starts, here's the picture. And I love diagrams and showing people how these things connect, and really getting them to connect with me on the why we're doing something, less about the numbers. The numbers are there. We can fix those numbers or we can improve those numbers, but building that relationship. Because something that I've noticed is that actually if people like you and if people trust you, trust is a really big word here. Yeah, so not just even about they can like you, but they might not trust you. But if they trust you, they will trust your data. They will trust what you're telling them.
Let's now move to the quick fire round. So I guess one question I always love is what's a contrarian view you have in the industry?
I don't think you need to spend a lot of money. I think everybody these days will talk about with AI and all this investment and money. Personally, and maybe this is my upbringing as well, but I honestly feel like it's not just about spending money to get value. We should look at what do we already have? What can we do differently, utilizing the skills that we have to get some value, right? Somebody else might come and argue with me, maybe the more widely accepted view of, but if you spend money, you'll be able to accelerate quicker. And maybe, but my view is always actually, let's not just spend money for the sake of it. I think let's, look inwards and kind of see what we can do differently.
How do you stay up to date as a leader in the industry?
So I like to attend some conferences just to see what's going on in the industry. I will stay up to speed with sort of like, Gartner models and stuff like that, just really sort of doing the research. So when I find the time or when I've got a topic that I'm interested in, I will go and see what's going on in the industry.
Great. So 3 very quick questions now. I think I know the answer for the first one. What was your favorite subject at school?
Oh, my favorite subject was maths, honestly. But you know what was funny, right? It was maths, but I was better at English.
Next question, favorite programming language?
SQL, I think. Yeah.
Oh, I wasn't expecting that. SQL.
Yeah.
All
Yeah.
right. And final question, Zaman, favorite music genre?
Oh, great question. I think from the bit old school, yes. But in the UK, we used to have like UK garage, yeah, like dance music, and there's garage. When I was younger as well, like American house was big then as well. So that for me, yeah, that's my favorites.
Great. Well, Zaman, thank you for joining us on the podcast today. I've really enjoyed our conversation.
Absolutely, it's been a pleasure. Thank you very much, Raoul, for the invite.
Great conversation with Zaman today. Lots of passion in the industry, which I love. There's two takeaways that jump out immediately. The first one is the importance of blending technical skills with solid communication skills in order to be a well-rounded data leader, right? So it's not just about learning the tools, the techniques. You also need to think about the business side, the value, and how to communicate with stakeholder. So I thought that was great guidance for individuals that are looking to progress their career. The second one, we touch a bit around what does it take to deliver a big project in a large organization like Great Ormond Street Hospital. We talked about triangulating the data and using that to make predictive sort of operational decision. Well, Zaman said nicely, like keep it simple and start with an MVP. There's no point planning this huge project with too many people and too many dependencies. Start as small as you can, an MVP, demonstrate value, and build it up from there. I think this mindset, which is a typical kind of like startup mindset, it's great to hear that, it's also the way to go in large organization to make things happen. So thank you, everybody, and see you on the next episode. Thank you for tuning into this episode of Data and AI Mastery. If you found value in today's discussion, make sure to subscribe so you never miss an insight from the leaders driving the future of data and AI. And if you're a data and AI leader looking to upskill your workforce with the fundamental data and AI skills to transform your business, Cambridge Spark is here to guide you every step of the way. Be sure to reach out to us on LinkedIn or on our website, cambridgespark.com. Until then, be sure to keep pushing the boundaries of what's possible with data, and remember, mastery comes with continued learning and action. Until next time, stay ahead, stay inspired, and stay masterful.